Welcome to the Cinematic Trail, an AI-generated deep dive conversation into the ever-evolving world of cinematography. From exposure theory to lens choices, from lighting philosophy to creative workflows, we explore the craft, the gear, and the stories behind the frame, one trail marker at a time. Want to take your cinematography to the next level? Explore our online courses and learn more at Cinematic.com. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for weekly insights and inspiration. Let's begin the journey.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Let's dive right in.
We're plunging into the stack of source material you've shared today. And right at the top is this really fascinating paradox, this kind of counterintuitive secret behind making things look bright.
That's right. Because, as Chris Tennard explains in his video, making something stand out visually, making it look bright, it isn't always just about adding more light.
Right.
Surprisingly often, it's about shaping the darkness around it.
It sounds backward, doesn't it? But it's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
So our mission in this deep dive is to unpack this concept, explore its roots a bit, and see how it's applied in, the real world of visual storytelling.
From films to photos.
Exactly, using the examples provided by Chris.
Yeah.
We want to discover why this simple idea is maybe one of the most effective ways to direct your eye, telling you exactly where to look.
Okay, so let's get to the core of this idea from the sources.
Yeah.
The fundamental principle is that brightness isn't absolute. It's perceived based on contrast. What looks bright isn't just intensely lit, it's intensely lit relative to its surroundings.
So perceived brightness is all about that relationship, that difference.
Exactly.
If you want something to truly pop and grab attention, you don't just blast it with light. You strategically, reduce the light or deepen the shadows everywhere else in the frame?
Precisely. And the goal, it's pure, unadulterated control over the viewer's gaze. Whether you're crafting a cinematic epic, a concise corporate message, or, a single compelling photograph, mastering light and shadow lets you guide their attention precisely.
To the most important element.
Yeah.
And when we talk about guiding attention with light and shadow, and Chris couldn't point to any better example than Alfred Hitchcock.
Oh, absolutely. Hitchcock was a master not just of suspense, obviously, but of visual language.
Yeah.
He used lighting as a direct narrative tool.
It wasn't just about illuminating the whole scene so you could see everything. And
No, it was about using light and shadow to tell you what was important or, to build that tension.
he was so strategic with highlights and, crucially, with shadows. He used them to guide your attention, maybe hint at hidden meanings, and just crank up that suspense. You only saw the piece of the puzzle he wanted you to focus on.
And a signature technique for him involved plunging most of the shot into darkness, just black.
Right.
By doing that, he could isolate a single critical detail, maybe a character's eyes or a key, a weapon,
Something vital.
and illuminate just that element. So in a sea of shadow, that lone spot of light becomes this undeniable magnet for your attention.
Like he's whispering, look here, this is the crucial bit.
Exactly that.
And Chris, to show that even far from the world of, psychological thrillers, that principle of isolating and highlighting key details using contrast
Yeah.
is just a foundational technique.
It really is foundational. And the sources you've provided offer some fantastic practical examples of this principle at work in different scenarios.
Okay, let's dive into the first one then, that farmer's hat in the historical documentary.
Right. So the context was filming B-roll inside an old farmhouse. They were trying to capture a sense of place, for a historical piece about a farming community.
Yeah.
And they were working with natural light, just streaming in from a window.
And the setup sounds pretty simple. An old farmer's hat placed on a chair near that window light.
Yes, simple setup. But the technique applied here was specific. They exposed the very tip of the hat, just a small part, to reach 100 IRE.
Okay, maybe let's just quickly clarify for anyone wondering, what exactly does hitting the 100 IRE mean, especially in, say, a standard digital video space like Rec. 709?
Good point. Think of 100 IRE as the absolute ceiling for brightness in a standard digital image. If you're using a tool like a waveform monitor, which measures brightness levels,
Yeah.
100 IRE is pure white. Anything that goes above 100 IRE is what we call clipped,
Meaning?
meaning you lose all detail in that area. It's just a flat white blob. No information left.
Got it. So once that little spot on the hat reaches 100 IRE, you literally cannot make that single pixel any brighter in the image itself. You've maxed it out.
Precisely. So if the goal was to make that spot look spectacularly bright, how do you do it if you can't add more light to that specific spot? As the source explains, the only way left to make that 100 IRE spot look even brighter is by making everything else look much, much darker.
By creating a massive contrast.
Yeah.
By dramatically pulling down the shadows everywhere else.
Exactly. By making the area under the chair, the wall behind it, even other parts of the chair itself significantly darker, that small 100 IRE spot on the hat feels incredibly intense.
It just pulls your eye right to it.
Right. The brightness is purely a perception created by the deep surrounding darkness.
And the sources also note something important. The frame isn't just like pure black everywhere else. There's still texture and depth preserved.
Yeah, that's crucial for realism and, well, depth perception. You can still see different levels of darkness, maybe on the chair's wood grain or the back wall, maybe a subtle gleam on an edge somewhere.
Right.
These variations prevent it from looking like a flat cutout. They enhance the overall illusion of depth and reality in the shot, all while reinforcing the contrast that makes the hat pop.
So it's not just one bright spot in pure black. It's more like a gradient of darkness that supports that main highlight.
Exactly. And, while this specific shot used natural light and just careful positioning, Chris does mention standard techniques like using negative fill.
Like black cloth?
Yeah, or black bounces, things that aren't used to add light, but to actively remove or absorb light from areas you want to be darker. It's about shaping the shadows to increase contrast where you need it.
It's another way to sort of paint with darkness.
Precisely.
Fascinating. So often the secret to brightness is subtraction, not addition.
Exactly. Which leads us nicely to the second example, that still photo of the young lady in Kenya.
Ah, yes. This one really links the visual technique directly to a powerful narrative idea, doesn't it?
It really does. The context is taking a portrait inside a school. You've got sunlight coming from a window, illuminating the young lady's face. Pretty standard setup.
And the technique, was it just adjusting the camera settings?
Essentially, yeah. Adjusting the camera settings specifically so the background, everything behind her, dropped way down into darkness.
Okay.
And the result is striking. Her face looks wonderfully bright, luminous even. But what's interesting, as Chris points out, is that her face isn't actually exposed all the way up to 100 IRE like the hat was.
Oh, really? So it's not clipped?
No, there's still detail visible in her skin, in the highlights on her face.
So it's purely the contrast with the deeply shadowed background that makes her face appear so bright.
Precisely. It feels incredibly bright because of what's behind it. And Chris suggests a powerful link here between this visual contrast and the story being told.
How so?
Well, the bright face against the dark background can serve as a kind of visual metaphor, representing something like a bright future being forged through education, emerging from maybe less certain circumstances.
Oh, I see. So the visual technique itself supports the narrative theme.
Yeah, it's doing double duty.
That's where this technique goes beyond just making something look good. It's actively communicating an idea or a feeling.
Which takes us to the third example, the opening shot of a corporate film, showing just a foot stepping out of a car.
Okay, very different context. This is all about making a clear entrance, right? Drawing attention to the start of something, introducing a character maybe.
Exactly. The setup is simple, a foot emerging from a car door. But the technique involved exposing the foot at a pretty moderate level. Chris mentioned something like between 45 and 70 IRE.
Okay, so definitely not maxed out like the hat example. Still lots of detail possible in the shoe or the trouser leg.
Exactly. But the key move was crushing the blacks. Making the background, the shadows inside the car, the tarmac maybe, as dark as technically possible, pushing them way down.
So everything around the foot is pushed down into deep, deep shadow.
Which instantly makes the foot the brightest element in the frame. Even though its actual exposure is just moderate, that high contrast against the deep black background makes it pop.
Your eye just goes straight to it.
Immediately, it draws your attention to the character's arrival and puts the focus squarely on that moment of introduction.
So the principle holds true across these different scenarios.
Yeah.
And even different levels of brightness.
Yeah.
Whether it's hitting the absolute limit of white like the hat, or having detail but strong contrast like the face, or just being the relatively brightest thing because the shadows are so deep, like the foot.
It all comes back to the same thing.
Brightness is a perception driven by contrast.
That's the absolute key takeaway from all these examples and the sources we looked at. To make something stand out visually, your first thought shouldn't necessarily be, how can I add more light? It should maybe be, where can I take away light? Or how can I shape the shadows to make my subject pop?
Embrace the darkness. It's not about how much light you have in total, necessarily.
No, it's how you use the relationship between light and its absence.
And that relationship, that contrast, is arguably the most powerful tool a visual storyteller has for directing your audience's attention precisely where they need to look.
Couldn't agree more.
So the advice is, next time you're trying to visually emphasize anything, could be a person, an object, even a specific piece of information, in a presentation experiment with this idea, don't just think about making your subject brighter.
Think about making its surroundings darker. It's all about creating that contrast.
Yeah, it's fundamental to how we see.
This principle applies far beyond just filming or photography, really. It's about how our visual system perceives the world, always in relation to its context.
So there you have it. We've deep dived into the, well, surprising power of using darkness and contrast to create perceived brightness and guide attention in visual storytelling. It's a fundamental principle that truly unlocks a lot of visual power.
And it leaves us with a provocative thought, maybe, to carry forward. How else might this principle of using contrast, of shaping what isn't shown or highlighted to emphasize what is shown, apply in your life?
Beyond just images.
Yeah. Could it be relevant in how you structure information, maybe, or in subtle communication cues, or even in, I don't know, defining something by what it isn't?
Something to consider the next time you're trying to make something truly stand out.
Definitely something to think about.
That's a wrap for this episode. Thanks for the great conversation.
Yeah, really great insights today. Thanks for tuning in and spending some time with us.
Thank you for joining us on the Cinematic Trail. We hope today's journey sparked new ideas and sharpened your eye behind the lens. Until next time, stay curious, stay creative, and as always, happy filming.